How's it going? I'm Jasper. So I'm going to go ahead and lay out the workings of dissociative identity disorder and how dissociative disorders come to be. In order to understand a dissociative disorder, first you have to understand early childhood development, which straight out the gate, one thing that most people don't understand is that we are all born plural. We're born a collection of ego states. And these ego states, as we experience life, they come to the front and take in what's going on. And as we go through our childhood, they accentuate and mature. And between the ages of 6 and 10, these ego states come together and bind, and you become a single person. What happens with the dissociative system is in our early childhood, usually around toddlerhood, anywhere between 0 and 6 years old. The latest I've heard of a system being seeded was 9. Massive trauma happens. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, chronically ill child that's in and out of the hospital all the time through their whole childhood. And it causes those ego states to not bind and just come next to each other. Now, there's several different forms of systems, and we'll get into those. The systems that people are the most familiar with is the heavily dissociative D.I.D. systems. Now, the thing is what caused that system not to bind is the ego states that were in the front when the trauma happened. It will tend to put the same few ego states up there when the abuse is occurring, and they take in all of these memories, and then they go in the back and hide it from you. So now as you go through your life, the system goes dormant after that failed binding to hide what happened. And then later on in life, alters can start coming out. Usually when you feel safe, when you're finally completely out of trauma and finally get into a routine of life and the brain's like, okay, they can handle it. It's time. And that's what happened with us. We finally wound up in a position where we didn't have a roommate or a significant other that could hold our apartment over our heads. We had a job and a place of our own for the first time in our life. And that's when the brain said, okay, Luna, you can get out of the cage now. So with the D.I.D. system, these trauma holders that took that in, most D.I.D. systems don't have communication between the alters. They're fully sentient individual beings. That's why it's not called multiple personality anymore. It's dissociative identity disorder. That dissociation that occurred when we swapped out is the telltale piece of the disorder. And that dissociation, when we experience now and it causes a switch, for a D.I.D. system, that alter that was in the front goes inside. And they may or may not have an inner world that they exist in, but when they're inside, they're not aware of what's going on out here. And the alters don't share memory with each other. We'll get into OSDD systems later because stuff like that becomes different with them, and that's what makes them different, is the difference in dissociation level. So after that switch, if they switch again and that alter comes back up, there's no update, there's no shared memory, they have no idea what just happened, and they have this amnesia and time loss. Now, there's several different ways to go about treating DID as far as your end goal, but the number one thing is therapy. It's trauma processing. Trauma created the disorder. Trauma is how you balance it back out. Once you're a system, you're always a system. Now, there is things like integration where you get alters to integrate with each other. In our opinion, this should never be forced. We believe it is unethical to try to force integration. However, that doesn't mean that it's a bad tool. If the alters are in agreement that they want to be integrated and want to work with you toward that goal, awesome. If not, don't force it. Functional plurality is a thing. Process that trauma till you can become less reactive and have an easier life day to day until you're functional and comfortable and able to get through your life without being miserable all the time. Functional plurality. So there's your introduction to DID and dissociative disorders. We will definitely be doing others on OSDD1B and OSDD1A. And we may just go ahead and ride the train on early childhood development and get into developmental disorders from there. Everybody have a great day. Do your self-care. What do you say, Astrid? Do your self-care, eat your food, stay hydrated, take your meds.